Welcome to Boxing Predictions, the home of the big fight predictions. So today we're going to be discussing and recapping some of the notable action of last night, which was Saturday, February the 24th, 2018. Now I invite you to jump down to the comment section below and let me know what you thought about any of the fights that we discussed today. And also remember, please subscribe. So the most notable card of the night was probably in Germany, and this was the Avalon event in conjunction with the World Boxing Super Series. The headline fight was the semi-final in the super middleweight division tournament, and that was Callum Smith taking on Nicky Holzken. Now, Callum Smith won unanimous decision over the 12 rounds. It was, a fairly one-sided, but once again, Callum Smith. He didn't win in style. He didn't really stand out or show how good he possibly is. Now, I like to look at it two ways, really. The first being the fact that I actually think that he's still relatively inexperienced and he hasn't really stepped up. Now, this obviously wasn't a step up. And he hasn't really stepped up his level of competition to date, despite the fact that, 23-0, fairly high knockout percentage, but his opponents have been lacking. And in my prediction video for the Smith versus Browne fight, I kind of indicated that I kind of still regarded Smith as a bit of a prospect. And someone kind of called me out of that on that video. But, you just have to look at his resume. The fight before this tournament, it was a British title fight. Now, there's no way of arguing against that. That's what it was. I mean, he has fought for a European title as well. But, he has not fought decent level of opposition. And, in these two fights in the World Boxing Super Series, he's looked laboured, hasn't really looked to have really been capable of taking out his opponent. And they haven't been of high quality opposition. On the other side, we can say that, this was a late replacement. Okay, this was a late replacement. In Smith's defence, we could say that he's preparing specifically for a tricky southpaw, with a wealth of experience. And then he's gone in against this kickboxer. It's always going to be a bit of tricky. And like I said in the prediction video for this Holzken fight, late replacements are rarely a walkover. You're never going to look good against a replacement, and they are a potential banana skin. Okay, and he got the victory, fairly one-sided, did not look good. And moving forward for this final against Groves, it's no surprise that everyone is going to be picking Groves. Everyone's going to be predicting that Groves wins, that Groves handles Smith fairly comprehensively. I have to kind of sway towards that way for now. But, once the dust has settled and there's time to really consider it, there'll obviously be a full and frank prediction on the channel for that fight. Now, on the undercard of this fight, wasn't a great card, to be honest. I mean, there was no real notable fights. The most interesting fight, even on paper, was Hughie versus Turner at heavyweight division. We all know Hughie is a phenomenal prospect, former Olympian, a good amateur pedigree, has all the attributes to be a great heavyweight, and is someone we're looking forward to. And Sean Turner managed to take him and give him some rounds and some good experience in the pro rank. So that was good to see, but it was fairly one-sided. Apart from that, really, we saw Chudinov get a victory, and he may be someone that becomes an alternate for the final, which would be utterly pathetic. But Chudinov actually lost to Eubank a couple of years ago. But anyway, there wasn't really that much of note on the rest of the card to really talk about, to be perfectly honest. And as I say, across the world there was lacking. Obviously there was a number of flyweight world title fights, but flyweight isn't particularly my game. But here in the UK, we had a card at York Hall, which was a Frank Warren show, and he exhibited a number of prospects, because that's what they are. And we saw the likes of the heavyweights in Daniel Dubois and Nathan Gorman both get relatively early stoppages. We saw Nathan Gorman, he seems to be one of these guys that, he's a big guy. He's carrying a bit of timber, in a similar way to Andy Ruiz Jr. I always feel that these sorts of guys, that they're big guys, that they don't need to be 18 stone. They can trim down slightly, to 16.5 maybe, and be a much better version of what they are now. And Nathan Gorman, he looks like someone who, he's a prospect and he's inexperienced. He hasn't got much of an amateur background, and that's a fact. He hasn't got much of an amateur background. He hasn't got much of a professional background. So he is quite raw, quite inexperienced, trained by Rookie Hatton. We'll really have to see where he can go. But for me, I would not rush him at all. He really needs to get some real grounding, real education in the game. We see Hughie Fury, he didn't have adult amateur experience. He has youth amateur experience, but doesn't really have the experience. He didn't really have the experience in the amateur ranks of fighting real men. Okay, and that's the problem with Nathan Gorman. He only has a handful of amateur fights before turning pro, fighting against men, and you really need to take time to really school these heavyweights against different types of opposition. Okay, so I wouldn't rush him at all. On the other hand, we had Daniel Dubois, again, very, very, very raw, similar sort of comments. Now he's younger, okay, really young guy. He looks like phenomenal shape, like quite a contrast to Nathan Gorman, but he is exceptionally raw. He's got this physical strength and scary power, but rest of it, he's developing his game. Again, there's no need to rush, and I don't want to see him rushed. Okay, and he had a tricky opponent in DL Jones. He was coming in low and he was holding and grappling, and he made it difficult. He made it difficult for Daniel Dubois, but it was a good test at this level of his career. We saw Anthony Yarde. Now he was the headline of the show against the French Tony Avalon. Now this was an interesting fight because Tony Avalon was pretty game and he kept going, but Anthony Yarde just kept landing, punch after punch after punch, and it was a bit of a brutal beatdown in the end. Now, there's a lot of talk about Anthony Yarde. He's a very kind of exciting guy. He's got the look and he's got the talk, and he's getting very highly ranked, despite the fact that 15 fights into a career. I would be wary of rushing him, putting him in with any skilled operators, because I think I hate to say it, but I think at this moment in time, against a skilled boxer, Anthony Yarde gets comprehensively beaten, unfortunately. I think he's too heavy-legged. Now he followed Avalon around the ring, for the 7 rounds, but very heavy-legged. And I think against an opponent of maybe equivalent size and strength, but can move, is light on his feet, I feel that Yarde would probably struggle. But we'll have to see. As I say, I wouldn't rush at all. I wouldn't rush at all with him. He needs to have more schooling for me. They talk about him fighting just in a couple of months, which is good. Just keep that rolling, slowly build up the level of opposition, and take it from there before really hitting the world class level, or even kind of being thrown in with one of the belt holders, because I think that would be a mistake. But there's my thoughts for some of the most notable stories of the night in February the 24th, 2018 in the boxing world. Now, if you've got any comments on that, feel free to jump down to the comment section below. And of course, hit the subscribe. Now, on the channel, we've got a lot of previews for fights that are occurring in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, we've got the big fight next week, Ortiz versus Wilder. We've also got Brook versus Rabchenko. We've got White versus Browne and Povetkin Price. Anthony Joshua against Joseph Parker. All good fights. We've got Hughie Fury challenging for the British title for the very first time against Sam Sexton. We've got a huge fight in the welterweight division, Horn versus Crawford. We've got Billy Joe Saunders against Martin Murray. I've also put up a video this week about the rematch of Tony Bellew versus David Haye. So please feel free to check out those videos and let me know your predictions on any of those fights. We'll see you soon.